Hey everybody, welcome back. Today, we're going to be addressing our new issue with the truck. 354,000 miles on it. It's a 2012 Ram 1500 5.7. And about the last 1,500 miles or so, I noticed the transmission was acting kind of weird. I wouldn't say it was going bad, but it was kind of slipping a little bit. You could tell it wasn't all there like it should be. And we're basically due for our transmission service. So I figured I'd go ahead and drop the pan in it and see what's going on. I found a good bit going on. It is a common issue with these and the valve body, but we'll get into it. All right, to remove this pan, we have to get all these 8mm bolts off. Once you get those loose, you can pretty much just drop the pan down. To get our filter here out, there is a T25 Torx right here. You just undo that with a 1/4" drive and it'll come out. Because you have to get this filter out first in order to get access to all these 6 bolts here that drop the whole valve body out of it. All right, also to drop our valve body out of here, we have to undo this plug here, the main harness, into the transmission. And there is this safety clip on here as well that you have to push down. Pop this down. To drop this valve body, there's 6 8mm bolts. One here, there, right over here, one here, and then one in the very back right there. So we got our valve body out of the truck, and here it is right here. As you can see, this bolt right here is sheared off. We have the little plastic O-ring for our accumulator piston popping out there. You'll notice our plate here is bent, as well as most of these screws are loose in it. So our accumulators in there are not very happy right now. But pretty much every screw here, aside from this one, is loose. This one's broke off. That was in the bottom of our pan. So, we got some parts here, new accumulator piston, and we'll get this thing sorted back out. All right, so we got our damaged accumulator piston out of here. As you can see, that thing is broken, cracked, definitely pushed in somehow, and sheared the little retaining ring off. So, luckily, we have our new one here. So we just put this back in here, slide it back in. So we got our new accumulator piston here. We just slide it back in. You gotta work the little plastic ring around in there. Put a spring back in here, and this is the part number for that accumulator piston right there. As you can see, our broken bolt there. We did get a new plate for it. Came with some screws, so that'll fix our missing screw here. All right, so we got our plate back on, everything all torqued back in, nice and tight. So we're ready to go ahead and put this valve body back in the transmission. It's not very invasive, you know, nothing flies out at you or anything of the sort. I would definitely recommend checking the tightness of these bolts anytime you do a transmission service on here. All right, so we got it all back together, buttoned up. So now we just have to add in our AT4 transmission fluid, and we should be good to go. The transmission here was rebuilt about 130,000 miles ago or so. But, you know, still kicking. But this kind of refers back to my other video where I was talking about the maintenance, you know, getting up there, high mileage, 354,000 miles on this thing. If you're slightly mechanically inclined, you can keep this thing running. You know, I don't know if you would consider that valve body a catastrophic failure or small issue going out, but it's not really that hard to tackle. So more than likely you can do it if you got a, you know, decent set of basic tools and the will to do it. But we've had a pretty decent run with this truck. I really don't foresee us getting rid of it anytime soon. We do have a few other vehicles that we'll be changing up, but this one's here to stay, and we'll probably be redoing it here soon. Yeah, going back through it, doing some upholstery work, either touching up the paint on it or repainting it. We'll see how that ends up going, but it definitely needs some attention. We got a couple door dings that, you know, they could be PDR'd, but then we have, you know, the door chips, things like that. Got a couple scratches in it, just the usuals. I think the biggest thing is our front bumper has quite a few paint chips in it. So definitely have to repaint the front bumper, the grill. Another big time Mopar issue from these generation vehicles. The metal kind of oxidizes and bubbles. So we do have some damage right there. But honestly, I've kind of been back and forth as to whether or not I want to keep the two-tone on here or do it one solid color, maybe go back with some flake in it, do something a little different with the paint. But for 2012 with 354,000 miles, it's held up pretty well. The only real issue inside is this right here on the driver's seat that I stitched back up. Everything else is held up pretty decently. Granted, the tan gets a little discolored from time to time, but the tan does clean up pretty well. As you can see, our mileage there. But it's crazy to think when this truck was picked out back in 2013, I never would have thought we would still have this thing to this day with this kind of mileage on it. It's wild. And overall, it's been a pretty good truck, you know, considering the things it needs from time to time. But really, any car you get is going to need some sort of maintenance, upkeep. It's just, you know, comes down to whether or not you think something like that valve body repair is simple or catastrophic. And things like that kind of determines your time with this truck, because there's quite a few things like that that end up happening. But you know, if you're mechanically inclined, it's not that big of a thing. A day, maybe, you can pretty much knock out any issue that comes about with this thing. I've pretty well gotten to the point where I can pull the heads off, rework the motor in about a weekend, put it back together, go to work on Monday. It's wild to think about, really. I mean, I'm probably all in that truck, maybe 35 grand in repairs and purchase price, everything over the past 12 years or so. So 35 grand, it's lasted me 12 years and basically 350,000 miles. I feel like that's a pretty good value for the money.